All right, let's just hop right into it. So I traveled with Remote Year and I really did not like it. Recently, the company actually announced that they are closing their doors and they are no longer in operation as of January 2025. Personally, I can't say that I am sad nor surprised to hear this news, especially after the experience that I've had firsthand with the program. So if you are interested in traveling with a organization that is similar to Remote Year, be sure to watch this video to the end so that you can know what to prepare for and what you're getting yourself into by traveling with programs like these. Hola, hola mi gente, ¿qué pasa? Y bienvenidos de nuevo a mi canal. If you're new here, what is up? My name is Ariana and I'm a digital nomad documenting my journey as I travel around the world. Today, we're gonna be talking about Remote Year and why I actually really did not enjoy traveling with them when I decided to do their 1 month program. At the end of 2024, actually in October of 2024, I decided to travel with Remote Year to go to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Now, this wasn't my first run-in with the program. I actually first encountered Remote Year back in 2017, 2018, I think is around the time I had first heard about the organization. And it had been in the back of my mind as I was thinking about possibly leaving the States and seeing what life was like outside of the US. And so not having been as traveled as I am now, I was a little hesitant about, just going and taking that leap by myself. And so when I saw different marketing about Remote Year and how they essentially set up all the logistics for you, you just bring a job and they plan out where you'll stay, your co-working accommodations or your co-working situation. They figure out a co-working space for you to work at. They guarantee that you'll have a solid internet connection and basically just providing you with a person on the ground that can help you to navigate a new place. Usually that's a local person that's from the area, as well as other people who are doing the same thing, who want to travel and who essentially you would make friends with in this group while you are working remotely and living abroad. So it sounded good, especially to younger me at that time who, like I said, I had gone on a trip or two there and I had done it with travel groups, but I had never really traveled on my own. So I knew I wanted to make this leap to leave, but I was, kind of nervous about doing it by myself. And so I ended up signing up for a Remote Year program. I talked with my job about it. They were fully aware. I was like, I'm going with this program. I'm going to do it for 4 months. It was through Latin America. We were going to kick it off in Santiago, Chile. And then I think it was through Argentina after that. And then Colombia and Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. No, it was Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Mexico was the route for the 4 months that I'd be traveling with them. So I'm super, super excited. I was supposed to leave on my birthday, actually. I was supposed to land in Santiago, Chile on May 3rd, 2020. And as we all know, the panorama hit and Remote Year actually closed their doors in 2020, like a lot of other travel companies, businesses, the world did at that time. And yeah, I was stuck in the States after making all these plans and preparations to leave. And Remote Year actually reached out and gave people who had paid for the program, because at this point I had already paid my deposit in anticipation to go. And so they offered to either give me a full refund back, or to give me credits for Selena, which Selena is a international Selena is a international hostel chain. So basically a hostel company, but they have different locations around the world. And similar to Remote Year, it's kind of a way to guarantee you have good internet. They're usually located in a good central area of the destination you're going to, and they often attract people that do things like remote work or like backpackers, people traveling like that. So yeah, I opted for the Selena credit just because I knew that even though 2020 put a halt on things, I knew I was going to travel anyway. Like, people were at my job were just like, oh, we're sad for you, because like people were excited that I was going, and they're like, oh, you have to be just so sad, right? And I was like, I mean, you know, it wasn't what I was planning on happening, but I'm still going. Like, my boxes are already here. Like, this apartment is getting packed up. I'm still leaving. I just don't know when I'm leaving. Okay, I'm getting out. I'm getting out. So borders opened back up towards the end of that year, like around November, December. And I was like, I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting for remote year to come back into business. It was still so much uncertainty around that time anyway. It was no guarantee that they were going to be back in business. So after being like this close to leaving and literally seeing everything get shut down, I was like, I'm out. I can't, once things open, I'm not waiting. I'm getting out of here. So that's actually when I packed everything up. I sold my apartment, or I leased my apartment to, I ended my lease, yes. So I packed things up. I ended my lease with my apartment and I got out. I got out and I headed to Colombia and I started my journey solo traveling, which you all have seen through the videos that I've uploaded to this channel, all the places that I have traveled to. And so that was, back in 2021, and fast forward to 2024, I have been traveling all these places and, you know, occasionally seeing different ads and things from Remote Year. After paying my deposit, I kind of was already in Remote Year's system, so I was getting emails from them this whole time. Their marketing emails would come to me and like I would look at them like, oh, okay, that's cool, you know, nice, whatever. Since I was traveling on my own now, it wasn't something I was really pressed about, especially looking at the price point for some of the trips that they were offering. It was like, yeah, I know I could go to that place for a fraction of that on my own, so like not even interested. But it seemed like a cool community. They've often marketed and advertised themselves as a program for digital nomads and remote workers. So I didn't mind being connected to the community and getting their emails because it just, it seemed to like fit with something I was interested in. Which brings me to my first point as to why Remote Year was just not it for me. I feel like they're really big on marketing, but their marketing was false advertisement. Being a digital nomad myself and having met a lot of other people that are traveling full-time, who are online entrepreneurs, who are working for themselves, who are creatives. Honestly, there's a lot of content creators that are out here, you know, making content, and that's how they are sustaining their lifestyle and traveling. That's the type of crowd I was expecting to network with if I did a Remote Year program. And that's not at all who was in at least the group that I went with for the month that I did the trip. It was not the type of crowd that I was expecting at all. I actually felt like such an outcast because everybody was in corporate America. Everyone either worked for a FANG company, a tech company, or there were, I think, 2 people that had their own businesses, but their businesses were to coach and offer services to corporate businesses. So everyone was tied to corporate, and it was just such a stark contrast for me, who not only had left corporate at least a year and a half before, but was looking to pivot and trying to do my own thing. There were people in the group who were getting up at like odd hours in the morning because they had to clock in at a certain time for their company. And meanwhile, people are like looking at me weird, like, why don't you come to the co-working space to work? And I'm like, part of my work is this. It's sitting and talking to a camera. The best place for me to do that is in the comforts of the place that I'm staying in, not in a co-working space. So it was a disconnect for me. I really did feel out of place with the group of people that I was with. And for me, that was a letdown because a big motivation for me doing Remote Year was because I had been traveling on my own for almost 3 years at that point, or I guess, close to 3 years at that point. And though I have made so many friends while traveling, and like I said, I've met other people that are out here doing the nomad lifestyle and are entrepreneurs in some aspect, I hadn't really made like a community, like a network of people doing this. And so I really wanted to tap in and connect with people in that way. I wanted to network with people that were either in this process transitioning into becoming content creators and entrepreneurs, or had successfully arrived, and people that I could take pointers from and get tips on as I am, pivoting to doing this full time, or pivoting to make this a main source of income for myself. So yeah, that's initially what led me to agree to travel with Remote Ear after all that time of having traveled on my own. Another reason that it caught my eye was because they were offering a singles month. This all ties back into the false advertising. So yeah, normally with their emails, it's like I said, I'd read it, okay, yeah, I could do this a lot cheaper on my own, whatever. But there were two things with this particular trip that stood out to me. One, the fact that it was in Buenos Aires. Like, Argentina was on my list. I actually had plans to go, and due to the panoramic, my plans got changed. I was literally at the airport and told that I couldn't board the flight to go to Buenos Aires. So it didn't work out in the past, and then I already was kind of felt like that maybe was a sign, because I was hesitant to go by myself. I talked about it a little bit in my review of going to Buenos Aires video, but I was hesitant just given the history and being a black person and being in Argentina. I was just like, I don't know if this is a good idea to go by myself. So the fact that the group was going to Argentina and I wouldn't have to be alone was like, okay, I don't mind being alone, obviously. I can travel solo, but it might be nice to, there's strength in numbers sometimes. And maybe if I go to Buenos Aires and it's not a good experience, I'm not received well, and I'm just uncomfortable, it would be nice to have a group of people who, they were still strangers, but like who I could relate to in a sense. And then two, they were advertising this particular month to be a singles month. So being a nomad and the difficulties that come with dating and just trying to meet someone that's in alignment with the lifestyle, it was appealing to me that they were offering such a month where not only where I could network in a business sense, but also like network in a romantic sense and relational sense. So I was like, okay, that might be worth looking into. I'm interested. So they did this whole thing where they asked people what their preferences were, what they were looking for in a partner. They made me fill out an application. Like you essentially submitted what you were looking for in a partner. So for added context, this is the marketing email that Remote Ear sent out in regards to Singles Month. You can see they clearly stated that they plan on choosing who goes on this trip based on the applications and the preferences from the people that apply. Now, I don't have access to the actual application, but essentially this is the information that I submitted to Remote Ear through the Google form that they sent out. I made it clear that I was looking for someone that had a similar lifestyle, meaning they could travel as a digital nomad, looking for someone that valued their faith, they value their family, and someone that speaks a second language. This is the response that I got a few days later after submitting my application. They were saying they have so many applicants applying for Singles Month, and they wanted to make sure that they pulled people that had preferences that were compatible for each other. So they kind of had me on like a waiting list or like a waiting period to let me know if I was actually going to be able to go on the trip. Keep all this in mind as I continue to talk about false advertising. They were diligent in saying that there's no guarantee that they would find you love, right? But ideally, they're going through this process of having people apply and accepting certain people to come on this program that could be compatible and like to travel and would be working and traveling in Buenos Aires. So it sounded good. And I'm like, all right. The price point, again, like with a lot of the other trips that I saw, I thought was ridiculous, and I was like, I don't know if this is worth it, especially because they required for this particular month that you book accommodations through them. I think normally the price point for the program itself would have been like $600 to $800, but with their accommodations, somehow that price jumped up to like $2,400, and I'm just like, what kind of accommodations I need? We live in a mansion, so you guys. Baby, an apartment in Buenos Aires. I talked about how prices in Argentina were ridiculous while I was there. They were so high because of inflation, but that was the one thing that was like reasonable. Like, the apartments do not cost that much. You can get a very nice place for like $600-700 on Airbnb, which is, Airbnb is not a cheap place to find accommodation. So that should just give you like an idea of how much this price jump over $1,000 for an apartment just was a lot. But in order to do this particular month program, this singles month that they were offering, you had to sign up for the whole ordeal. You could not book your accommodations separate. You were buying the program and the accommodations, and within the program it included access to the co-working space and whatever activities they included in their itinerary. So in a nutshell, I say that it was false advertising because Remote Year promotes themselves as a travel group for digital nomads. I didn't feel like I was on a trip with nomads. Like, a lot of people that were there, they had 1 month that their company allowed them to be remote, and that's what they were there for. They were traveling for that 1 month out the year that they got, and they were there to live it up in Buenos Aires. And I don't say that with any shade at all. Like, it is what it is, but that's just not the lifestyle. That's not the lifestyle that I live. So I already was feeling out of place, because being a content creator and working for yourself looks very different from someone who works remotely for a corporate company. But then on top of that, you had people coming with the mindset of they were on vacation. This was a month and they got 1 month to live it. And they were doing all the vacation-y things, all the touristy things, and that's what they were focused on. And meanwhile, I'm just like, what the locals doing? Where how can I meet and mingle with locals? How can I go and practice my Spanish? What do, you know, people do that outside of like going to bars and clubs and just getting crazy drunk and like partying all the time? That is not my scene. It wasn't my scene in the States. It's definitely not my scene when I'm traveling. I'm trying to see museums. I'm trying to go see what, I don't know, just what are the locals doing? Where the tango shows at? The ones that are like, that's where all the local people are going, not the overpriced ones that they know foreigners are coming to pay for tickets for. Like, I want to see authenticity, okay? So I just really felt like I was on a whole nother spectrum than the people that were in this group with me. And that is not their fault per se. I think it's Remote Year's fault for marketing to me that I could expect to be connecting with other people that traveled full time, that lived a nomadic life, or at least were interested in another side of travel beyond just vacation, is the best way that I can describe it. So that was number one. I really did feel like it was false advertising, and that for me was a letdown. And then the second reason why I did not like it, there was no diversity in the group. I don't know if that was like hinted at when I said everyone was from FAANG companies, but everyone was also pretty much from the US. And when I tell you the culture shock after not living in the States for so many years, and it was literally reverse culture shock for me, because everyone, it felt like, was from California or New York, and everyone worked at these corporate companies, and everyone just had, it was so much similarity. It was a lot of white people in our group. It was a lot of white people in our group. I don't know how else to say that. Like, there were a few others sprinkled in here and there. I was one of 3 black people. There were 2 other black girls on the trip. There was 1 Mexican girl, and there was another guy from Latin America and another guy from Europe. I think that covers it. Everyone else, if they had other ethnicities mixed in, they were still very much American. So it was very much giving like I just basically signed up to be on a US trip, and all I can say, it was reverse culture shock. And it also leads into false advertising, because again, Remote Year would constantly send out emails and market themselves to be a diverse travel group. They would give out numbers, like I can't remember exact numbers, and I know I won't be able to find it now because since they're not in operation anymore, their website is down, but they used to show statistics of like 40% of African American descent or black people, and like show these statistics of the different ethnicity breakdowns within their trips. But they were talking trips as in like a whole, people that sign up for the year-long trips, people that sign up for the month trips, people that sign up for the 4-month trips. Like, they were doing such a zoomed out perspective and using those statistics, when in fact you zoom in on one particular trip, those numbers are a lot lower. They're a lot lower, and it was not nearly as diverse as what they were making it. So I just felt like it was deceitful, honestly. Like, they have a FAQ page that I remember reading before deciding to actually go and sign up for the program, and it talked about how, like, how do I know there'll be diversity on the trip? Like, they really do hone in on it and make it a topic that's talked about, which is good. You know, you should aim to have diversity in your program, but when it's not really got no diversity, like, I just feel like there are other steps to be taken. Like, maybe not just market to people in the States. Maybe lower your prices to be more reasonable so that people outside of America can actually join in on it. If it wasn't going to be a huge group of just nomads that could connect and travel together, it should have at least been a much more broader, diverse group globally. I'm talking people from Africa, I'm talking people from Asia, and not people that live in the States from these places, but people that are actually from other parts of the world. That, to me, would have brought a whole nother level to the travel group itself. That would have just expanded the experience to be something a lot more than just going to some place on vacation and essentially feeling like it was like moving a group of people from the States to this new city, and like they just intermingle with themselves and then you move them back to the States. I just feel like it's not, you don't grow that way. You don't get a full you don't get the full cultural experience that way. And yeah, it was just a missed opportunity for sure, having such a lack of diversity within the group. Okay, it was getting really dark in here. Currently I am in Da Nang, Vietnam, and it was so sunny earlier today, but I guess it's still kind of rainy season, so like it's mad cloudy. It's not raining, but it's cloudy at like 4:30 p.m. It's getting dark, but anyway, we're here. And that brings me to the third reason why remote year was not it for me. And I kind of touched on this before, but I feel like with this particular month that I went to go travel with them, things were drastically overpriced. We did not get what we paid for, which is why I said I'm not very sad that they went out of business. I really feel like, given the timing of when they told us the program was, the organization was ending, and the timing of our trip, they tried to milk every last penny that they could get out of that trip so that they could stay afloat. And I just, again, it all ties back to like just being really, it's so much deception within that. Like, things were just overpriced and it just wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to pay so much money and not get any value out of what we were paying for. So a good example of this was definitely the accommodations. As I broke down before, we were paying a lot for accommodations given what the average price point is in Buenos Aires. When I tell you, I opened the door to see this place and I just, like, I remember just standing still and like trying to take in where I was, because I was just like, this is and it's a tough spot, because I feel like gratitude is something I try to exude regardless of my situation, but I struggle because I know what I paid and what we got, it didn't line up. The accommodations were so bad. Like, my place was not up to my standards at all, but there were a handful of people in the group who actually had to be moved out of their accommodations because their building was that bad. They were having issues with mold, and I don't even remember, like bugs, I think too, were a problem. It was literally, the entire building was bad, and the way that they had set the group up, it was 30 people, and it may have been like I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but like 5 to 8 people per building. And so I had heard like 1 or 2 people, you know, people were asking like, how's your room? How's your place? Because everyone had their own apartment. And I had heard 1 or 2 people be like, yeah, my place is not all that great. And so I'm like, yeah, mine isn't either. But I didn't realize like how bad some other people had it until we learned that literally everybody in one singular building had to be moved to another location, because I really do feel like remote year, like I said, scrambling to get funds, knowing the situation that they were in, they basically tried to charge the highest amount that they could get out of us and then find the crappiest and cheapest apartments to put us in. That's just my theory, but yeah, people literally had to leave their building, and they had to be put into other accommodations because their original living situation was not livable. If that doesn't give overpriced, I don't know what does, because the math is not mathing. And after the program, I actually ended up staying longer than the month because I felt like I really did like Buenos Aires, but I didn't have the best experience because I had been with this group. I hate to talk about it like, ooh, because it's not so much the group of people that I was on the trip with. It's more so like, again, how remote year set this up and presented it to me, and the expectations that I had going into it, which partly could have been my fault because I probably should have went with like 0 expectations. But when you pay for a service, when you pay for something and like you're told it's going to be a certain way, it's kind of a given that you're going to have expectations. And this like not only did not meet, but it was under the ground when it came to like the expectations even coming close to meeting those expectations. So yeah, being that the entire month I had been kind of like with this group, I had been in the accommodations that remote year picked, I just felt like I liked the city, but I wanted to experience it on my own because I knew A, that it would be better if it was just me on my own, but B, I knew that I could do it in the way that I wanted to do it and leave Buenos Aires with like a better outlook and just have a better experience overall. So I ended up staying longer, and I booked my own accommodations that I found that were a fraction of what we paid for the crappy accommodations that we had before. And I mean night and day. And that just affirmed for me how much of a ripoff, that remote year was. Just another big ripoff was the co-working space. I didn't do much work in the co-working space. Like I said, doing content creation and things like that, there was no need for me to really go. But from those who went to the co-working space, I heard that it wasn't even all that great either. Like I may have went to the space like once or twice. It just was not a welcoming space where I would want to be working, even if I was working for a remote company. Like I would much rather go work at a cafe or something. Like it just was not good. It was giving corporate. It was giving worse than corporate. Like it just was not, it wasn't a building that you wanted to be in to work. It was fluorescent lighting, and like the vibes in there, the energy was not lively like you would expect from just other co-working spaces. There are co-working spaces even here in Vietnam, and there's certain elements, right? Like the type of seating, the type of lighting, just how the environment is set up, different events going on. It more so gives like hostile community vibes with people working versus like a dreadful office where you just have space to lay your stuff out. Like we got ripped off when it came to the accommodations. So the least that they could have done is at least made the program activities good. And again, this is singles month, so you would think there'd be like a lot of opportunities to like mix and mingle, not just with the group, but outside of the group. I was trying to meet the locals. Like, one thing I knew for sure, and I've mentioned this in another video, I have no interest as of right now, unless the Lord has other plans. But when it comes to like naturally what I am attracted to, what I am interested in, I ain't got no interest in dating somebody from the States. I would love to date someone that is of a different culture than me, because for me that's interesting. It's interesting to learn about other cultures. It's interesting to just grow in that way. And I have found that when I left the States, people that I've been drawn to have not been American. I have not dated an American man since I have left the United States. So the fact that I was going into this program and we had a WhatsApp group where people had already shared where they were from, you know, what they did, just kind of getting to know one another. I was like, okay, so nobody in this group is somebody that I would be romantically interested in. This is a networking event as far as I'm concerned. Like, hopefully, once I got there, I learned it wasn't that either. But yeah, to know that everyone was from the same place, I'm thinking, all right, well, remote year obviously understands that this is supposed to be diverse. You know, these are travelers. Obviously, if people travel, they would be interested in meeting people beyond just the States. So they made a WhatsApp group for the Buenos Aires trip, and I don't know, guys, I'm kind of disappointed already. It's not disappointment, that's probably not the right word, but like, I'm looking in here, not everyone has their profile picture up, but like everybody, put it like this, I'm the only melanated person in this group. This was kind of my fear with signing up for this, especially with it being like a singles month. I did not want to be like a token in a group of white people. But I told myself that when I signed up to do this, even if it didn't work out like dating wise, it was going to be a networking connection type of situation. And of course, it'll be nice to travel and not be completely alone. Like, I've been traveling solo for 3 years now. So it's kind of good to switch it up, you know, be able to share experiences with some other people. And they did say that there's other people that will still be joining. We're like a month out before the trip. I just need a lot bit of diversity up in here. That's all. So I'm a little concerned. I don't know how much dating I will be doing in this singles month trip, but we will see. Maybe I'll get some new friends. So I did go into it expecting for singles month there would be opportunities to mix and mingle, not only with the group, but with people from Argentina, other travelers coming through Argentina. There was none of that. There was none of that. It was like when it came to coming up with activities around like the singles month concept, there was no additional effort put into actually planning out activities. There also was no additional effort in actually finding people who were compatible, which for me was like a slap in the face, because did you not have me fill out an application telling you what I was looking for in a partner, and you had the nerve to just throw me into a group of like random people? I don't even know if they even read those applications that were submitted, which yeah, that in itself was frustrating. But I know that they did not take any time into actually trying to find people that were compatible to come on this trip. One, because there's proof in the pudding. As I mentioned, there was 30 people on this trip. Out of those 30 people, there was one couple. Whether or not they're still together, I don't know. But there were 2 people out of 30 that managed to be like, oh, I like you enough to be like, yeah, I like you. Mathing. And I also know that they did not put much consideration into actually finding people who were compatible, because I later heard through the grapevine, aka someone that I'm friends with outside of the group who has connections to remote year, that they were scrounging to get men on this trip. So much so that at least 1 or 2 of the guys didn't even actually go through the application process. They got pulled in last minute from another remote year trip that was in Brazil. At this rate, they could have just pulled people off the street, because that was the equivalent of what it was giving. There really was no extra care or concern put into actually trying to make this like a successful singles month. Like, it was, And then when it came to the activities, I just felt like it was a sense of laziness behind it. Like the first week, it was a lot. They were throwing a lot out at us trying to do all these things. And our local guide Nyla was telling us that it's because they wanted everyone to be able to really connect and get to know each other earlier on in the month as opposed to later on in the month. Which I guess I could kind of understand, but my thing is if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. You know, like this whole idea of rushing things within the first week did not make sense to me, because when you have people who are actually compatible, like they'll naturally gravitate towards each other, whether it's at the beginning of the month or the end. And this being a group of travelers, there should ideally be some flexibility there where it's like, oh, I like you, you like me too, you know, let's hang out here for a couple weeks and get to know each other a little bit better. There's no rush to it. Like there's flexibility in the travel schedule and how you decide to get to know that person, or worst case you do long distance for a little bit and then meet up somewhere else. So I really didn't understand that. But the first week we had a like a speakeasy bar hop type of thing. Again, very much touristy. I did like the speakeasy a lot. It was actually like one of my favorite places that we had visited. But everything else was like clubs, bars. What else did we do? We did like a walking tour. I can't remember outside of that. Obviously it wasn't anything memorable. But when it came to the activities, they were just like general travel activities, right? Like things that you could have done for any remote year group. And also, I did not find out until after signing up for the program that these activities only included a certain amount of activities. So they were maybe like 4 or 5 free events, and then everything else was an additional cost on top of what we had already paid for the program and the crappy accommodations. So in short, singles month was lacking. It might as well have just been a regular degular remote year month, or they should have called it our last hoorah month as far as I'm concerned, because that's what it felt like. They were trying to milk out as much money as they could in any aspect. The free activities that were included, I wouldn't even call them free, the activities that were included in the program were subpar. And the fact that doing other things like there was a food dining experience, which I actually really liked. It was very bougie, but I liked it. But it was nice to be able to, it gave the opportunity to be able to experience the like traditional Argentinian foods, and it was a nice experience. But that was an additional cost, and it was something that I felt like that could have been included in all that we had paid for when it came to the program. And then I just think overall, the type of activities that were picked out, it was very much leaning on the touristy side. It very much felt like Remote Year had all these partnerships with these super tourist focused organizations, and they were more focused on working with these partnerships than actually providing us with like an authentic cultural experience. I was really surprised that we didn't do something that like gave back to the local community. Like we could have did a volunteer event. I think that would have, one, gave us the opportunity to mingle with the locals, hello, but also just give back to the place that we were in, to be able to connect and see another side of the city outside of like where all the tourists go. And then contribute to a good cause, hello, give back. I was really surprised that that wasn't included in our activities. There weren't anything around like language exchanges. I think besides me and the 2 Latino people, nobody spoke Spanish. I won't say nobody spoke Spanish, but like people did not have the confidence to speak Spanish. People were seeking English speaking places, or were excited when it was like, oh yeah, they speak English here. So that was disappointing, because as someone who loves languages, who travels and enjoys that aspect, I just didn't understand why there wasn't more of that incorporated into the type of activities that were within the program. And then when it came to just social networking from a business perspective, again, falling back to that digital nomad sense, Buenos Aires actually turned out to be a huge digital nomad hub, which I was not aware of until I got there. But when I went, I saw so many different organizations and events specifically targeted towards digital nomads. So the fact that Remote Year had not partnered or done anything in relation to some of these events was surprising to me. Like, again, if you want to charge us buku money, just at least get creative with what you're offering. That's the least you could do. All in all, I would say remote year was not for me. If that's not blatantly obvious, it was not for me at all. And I think I've gotten to the point where I would say travel groups as a whole probably aren't my speed, just because I have been traveling solo for so long. I've kind of adjusted and gotten into a routine of my own. And as much as I enjoy meeting people while I'm traveling and I have fun connecting with others, I think outside of a travel group just makes the most sense for me. But I do still long for that community, so much so that I created a community of my own called the Melanated Nomad Network. It is a community of like-minded nomads, people of color who are out here traveling or interested in the digital nomad life, coming together to support one another, to connect, and just share different ideas, different ups and downs about their journey, about being an entrepreneur, about different destinations that they've traveled to and what their experiences have been like. So yeah, if nothing else, this experience with a remote year actually inspired me to just create the community that I was looking for, instead of paying people thousands of dollars to be disappointed when it didn't work out in the way that I wanted it to. But if that's something that's interesting to you, if you are a digital nomad or you would like to connect with other digital nomads because you may be interested in pursuing the lifestyle in the future, definitely be sure to join the Melanated Nomad Network. I will leave a link down below in the description box to our Facebook community. As far as traveling with a group, obviously you can't travel with remote year, that's out of the water. But if you are someone who has looked into other type of travel group organizations, I wouldn't rule it out completely, especially if you have never traveled alone or by yourself before. It can be daunting, it can be really intimidating, not only to just be by yourself in these new spaces, but also just navigating new places and figuring things out. It can be a lot for your first time. So I wouldn't completely, nix the idea of trying out a travel group, especially if you find one that really resonates with you and seems to be a good fit. I would say do your research, and if you can, reach out to people that look like you, if you can, who have also traveled with this particular organization, just so you can get a full idea and know what you're getting yourself into before you actually go on a trip. I will say I don't have any regrets about traveling with remote year. I think if it was something that I hadn't done and then had saw that they went out of business, I would have always been kind of left wondering what it would have been like to travel with them, especially given my history with having signed up for the program and it not working out. So I feel like it was just something that, it was an itch that had to be scratched. Like I had to do it to know that it wasn't for me. And it also led me or pushed me to get to Buenos Aires, and I really enjoyed my time there. So I don't have any regrets about doing the program, but I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't do it again, and I can't say that I would recommend it for digital nomads, but it could be a program similar to it could be a good fit for someone looking to travel solo for the first time, or interested in dipping their toes into the digital nomad lifestyle without fully taking that whole leap. So yeah, thank you guys as always for watching this video all the way through to the end. I'm really curious if any of you all have traveled with remote year or would be interested in traveling with a travel group. Let me know down in the comments below where you stand on that, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Ciao.